In May 2025, Steve Witkoff, the U.S. President's special envoy to the Middle East, sat down with American journalist Isaac Stanley Baker in his office on the second floor of the West Wing of the White House. A journalistic conversation took place between them, the aim of which was to introduce the American people and the world to Witkoff's identity and the nature of his work, as he is considered one of Washington's most powerful and enigmatic figures, or, as Baker describes him, the real Secretary of State. What was important in this meeting was that Witkoff, while speaking with Baker, retrieved his backpack and emptied its contents onto the desk to show him a very special gift he had received from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a number of senior Israeli officials. The gift, which Witkoff was delighted and proud of, was a pager similar to the pagers that the Israeli occupation detonated in the hands of Lebanese Hezbollah members in September 2024. What was special about the version Witkoff received from the Israelis as a souvenir was that it was inscribed in English with the phrase, "Dear Steve, Friend of the State of Israel," followed by 3 letters, OTJ, which is short for One Tough Jew. In fact, the words engraved on the pager are perhaps the best description of Witkoff. This man, firstly, can be considered the most important friend of Israel within the American administration, and secondly, he is indeed one of the most powerful Jews in Washington today. Witkoff, whose wealth has recently increased to $2 billion, is involved with the U.S. president and his children in a cryptocurrency project. Trump has placed all important foreign policy files in his hands, such as the negotiations between Hamas and Israel, nuclear negotiations with Iran, and the Russia-Ukraine war negotiations. This, of course, leads us to the following logical questions. Who is Witkoff anyway? What is the nature of his relationship with Trump? How does this man manage negotiations with clear bias towards Israel, specifically Netanyahu? And how does he play a direct role in the crime of starvation currently being committed by Israel in Gaza through an American-Israeli project? This is part of what we will discuss together in today's episode. I am your host, and this is the Intel Runner Plus. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us a lot. Steve Witkoff, born 1957 Bronx, is a lawyer-turned-developer who moved from Dreyer and Traub into New York real estate with colleague Larry Gluck, flipping small buildings. Their first sale netted $50,000, then co-founding Stellar Management. In 1997, he launched the Witkoff Group. His tie to Donald Trump began in the mid-1880s. At 3 a.m. in a midtown diner, he spotted Trump, who'd come in without cash. Witkoff introduced himself and picked up the tab for a ham and Swiss sandwich. "I wanted to be him," he later said. They crossed paths again in the early 1990s. Witkoff reminded Trump of the sandwich, and a friendship took root. Golf rounds, Yankees games, regular contact that would later place Witkoff inside Trump's inner circle. In 2013, Witkoff and partners bid over $650 million for New York's Park Lane Hotel, planning a condo conversion. They put in about 15%, with Mubadala taking roughly 30% and Malaysian investor Joe Low via Jinwell the majority. When Low's role in the 1MDB scandal emerged, the U.S. Justice Department moved in 2016 to seize assets tied to him, putting Park Lane at risk. The owners agreed to market the hotel and escrow Low's proceeds. A late 2017 auction drew no bids at a near $1 billion ask. In 2018, Low surrendered his stake, which Mubadala acquired under a DOJ framework, clearing the title. COVID then battered hospitality, and in 2023, the owners sold to the Qatar Investment Authority for $623 million, below the original price, closing a decade-long saga that weighed on Witkoff. This wasn't about a hotel anymore. It was about how a real estate friendship turned into foreign policy power. Trump won in 2016 and left office in 2021 after losing to Joe Biden, a period that saw many allies distance themselves after January 6th. Witkoff didn't. He kept visiting, fundraising, and defending Trump in court, which cemented his place in the inner circle. Witkoff stayed close to Trump through the roughest stretch. He testified for him in New York, helped raise money, including at Trump's golf clubs, after Biden warned Israel about Rafah, and happened to be with Trump in Palm Beach during the second assassination attempt in September 2024. Their families also went into business together, with Witkoff and his children joining Trump and his children in the crypto venture World Liberty Financial. For a man who prizes loyalty, that record kept Witkoff inside the inner circle. So when Trump defeated Kamala Harris in November 2024, he was well placed to seek and receive a role. After Trump won the 2024 election, he named Steve Witkoff his special envoy to the Middle East on November 12, 2024. The choice surprised much of Washington's diplomatic circle, but it reflected one thing above all: Trump's deep trust in a longtime friend who could speak for him. Within weeks, Witkoff was in Doha working on a Gaza ceasefire hostage deal in January 2025, his first major assignment, signaling that loyalty, not resume lines, would define his brief. Another reminder before we move on: please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel to the Intel Runner Plus. It helps us a lot. As the president-elect's envoy to the Middle East, Witkoff participated in the ceasefire negotiations that were sponsored by the Biden administration, alongside Egypt and Qatar. On January 10, 2025, Witkoff arrived in Doha to join the negotiations. In this context, Witkoff played a role in pressuring Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire plan that came into effect in mid-January 2025. He warned Netanyahu against attempting to sabotage it and informed him of Trump's eagerness for it to happen before his inauguration. Witkoff's success in compelling Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire plan, which had been on the table with almost the same details for months, created a quick and inaccurate impression about Witkoff's competence as a negotiator. This is because this man later touched no file that didn't turn into a complete disaster. This happened in the Iran negotiation file, which Trump entrusted to him days after his inauguration, and it also happened in the Russia-Ukraine war file, which he took over in February 2025. Trump handed Witkoff the three most important foreign policy files, to the extent that people questioned, what is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, doing? The first file, Iran, ended, as you know, in a war after he himself participated in deceiving the Iranians, which you can find all of its details in the episode on the screen. The second, the Russia-Ukraine war, the most prominent manifestation of Witkoff's failure was allowing a seasoned manipulator of his opponents, like Russian President Vladimir Putin, to manipulate him and his president to the point of embarrassing Trump himself after he appeared weak in the face of Putin. Many U.S. officials from the beginning had doubts about Witkoff's ability to deal with Iranians and Russians who, in their view, are considered among the most difficult and powerful negotiators in the world, especially since Witkoff largely relies on his shallow experience and poor knowledge of the history of the conflicts he is negotiating. This also happened in the file where he achieved initial success, the Gaza ceasefire file, but it happened for a different reason: Witkoff's blatant bias towards Israel and its Prime Minister Netanyahu. Witkoff visited Gaza with Israelis for the first time in January 2025. When he returned, he described the destruction there to Trump and informed him that the reconstruction process could take 15 years or more. Moreover, Witkoff also played a role firstly in Israel's non-compliance with the truce terms that were signed in Doha in January, such as the entry of 600 aid trucks daily, 600,000 caravans, 200 tents, in addition to heavy equipment for rubble removal. And secondly, he played a role in Israel's unilateral violation of the truce and its return to aggression on Gaza in early March 2025, before the agreed 2 months expired. Witkoff and Netanyahu turned their backs on the January 2025 agreement and refused to complete its agreed-upon phases. For those of you who don't know, the agreement consisted of 3 phases. Phase 1. Hamas released 33 Israeli captives, including 8 deceased. In return, Israel released about 1,700 Palestinian prisoners from its prisons, out of 1,900 who were supposed to be released. Phase 2, which never took place. Hamas was supposed to release the remaining captives, and in return, the war would cease, and the Israeli army would withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Phase 3, which also never took place. This was the reconstruction phase of Gaza. However, Witkoff, in agreement with Netanyahu, allegedly overturned this agreement and tried to help Israel recover the rest of its captives from Hamas for literally nothing. Witkoff ignored that there was a second agreed-upon phase and proposed a new truce to Hamas. The idea was simply that a ceasefire would occur during Ramadan in exchange for the release of half of the remaining Israeli captives in Gaza on the first day of the proposed truce. Of course, this cunning and failed proposal was rejected by Hamas, which insisted on Israel's adherence to all phases of the January agreement. Based on this, Netanyahu, in agreement with Witkoff and Trump, violated the truce, ordered the Israeli army to return to aggression on the Strip, closed all crossings leading to the Gaza Strip, and imposed a complete blockade, preventing any form of aid from entering. One more reminder, if you have listened this far, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us a lot. Israel was already using aid as a pressure tool on Gaza since the beginning of the war, amidst continuous tightening. But at this point, Israel decided to escalate its crimes and use starvation as a pressure tool on Gaza to force them to emigrate from it. Witkoff played an active role in supporting Israel in this Israeli starvation plan, which has currently led the Strip to a state of famine that has claimed the lives of dozens of its people, most of them children. This Israeli-American starvation plan is allegedly implemented through a suspicious company known as the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. On January 7, 2025, Witkoff reportedly met secretly in New York with UN Security Council ambassadors to discuss, among other topics, a new U.S.-Israeli aid distribution mechanism for Gaza. According to what the Financial Times reported from informed sources, Witkoff warned in this meeting against challenging the American-Israeli plan. His threats were primarily directed at the World Food Program WFP and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, which are considered the largest aid distributors in Gaza. The Americans informed the World Food Program that the United States, which is the program's largest funder and responsible for nearly 40% of its budget, the budget would cut off funding if it defied the American-Israeli aid distribution plan. With American complicity, traditional UN-backed aid distribution points, about 400 distribution points across the Strip, were systematically disabled. Palestinians were only allowed to receive aid through 4 distribution points, 3 in southern Gaza and 1 in the central Strip. There are no distribution points in the northern sector, and this is not a coincidence. It was intentional. The Israelis deliberately concentrated the people of Gaza in the south with the aim of facilitating their displacement, and the ideal destination, from their point of view, is Egypt. However, this goal has not been achieved so far because, firstly, Egypt rejects the displacement of Palestinians from their land, and secondly, the people of Gaza themselves do not want to leave their land. In this context, the Israelis continue to exterminate the people of Gaza through their aggression, which has so far claimed the lives of no less than 60,000 people, most of them women and children. In recent weeks, specifically since late May, these distribution centers have become death traps for the people of the Gaza Strip, as Israeli forces, in cooperation with Americans, are reportedly killing dozens of people from the Strip daily while they wait for aid. Unfortunately, with no other source of food, the people of Gaza, especially men, are forced every day to face the risk of death to provide their wives and children with some flour to satisfy their hunger. But with a large portion of the population unable to obtain aid, and the aid itself being insufficient, the people of the Gaza Strip are literally dying of hunger every day. Children are dying in the Strip in a crime against humanity simply because the Israelis have closed all crossings leading to the Gaza Strip and imposed a criminal blockade on it. Some might ask, why is Israel doing this? But in my opinion, the more realistic question is, why not? Israel is known for its criminality from ancient times, so this is its nature and nothing new. What prevents it from acting according to its nature and exterminating Gaza, its men, women, and children? Firstly, the Americans, led by Trump and Witkoff, are behind it. Secondly, there is no strong pressure on Netanyahu, neither internationally nor from Arab nations, except for condemnation and denunciation. Israel has closed all crossings, including Rafah, which it occupied the Palestinian side of in May 2024. And until now, there are no strong, real international efforts to push it to do the opposite. Witkoff, however, said there was no famine, only a food shortage, contradicting UN and NGO reporting. Trump had himself used the word famine days earlier, but is often swayed by whoever spoke to him last, making Witkoff's framing consequential. This point leads me to the question of the episode. Americans and Israelis have indicated in various statements recently that the disarmament of Hamas in Gaza, especially the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, is an essential condition for stopping the Israeli-American aggression on Gaza. So, from your point of view, could Gaza have a better future without its weapons? And in the absence of these weapons, who could present themselves as a guarantor against Israeli aggression on disarmed Gaza? Could this guarantor, who is theoretically capable and willing to challenge Israel and prevent it from attacking disarmed Gaza, be America, a specific Arab state, or the Arab states collectively? I will follow your answers in the comments. In the end, if you liked the episode and want to see us again, please subscribe to the Intel Runner Plus and wait for our new episodes. See you in the next video.